We're live, Councillor Heron.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the decision days of myself, the Executive Lead Member for Children's Services, as well as that of Councillor Foster, the Executive Member for Education. These decision days are being broadcast in one session live on YouTube and via the County Council's website. With that, first, deputations. I don't believe, Adam, that we've received notification of any.
No, there's been no deputations.
Excellent. So that takes us straight into item 1, which is the Children's Services Procurement Approval to Spend. And Natalie, I think you're introducing this one.
This one, Councillor Heron, is Claire Fuller's going to lead this as lead commissioning officer.
Okay, apologies. I'm just going on what's on my briefing note. Perhaps we could just check those through before the meeting. That'd be helpful. So, Claire, over to you.
Lovely, thank you, Councillor Heron. So this paper is seeking approval to spend through 3 frameworks, which will enable the council to provide children's residential care, supported lodgings accommodation and adoption support therapies. They are all statutory requirements, and the frameworks provide transparent and compliant routes for the council to purchase these services. They cover services that are already being delivered, so there's no they correspond to existing budgets and funding sources. They're not relating to new money. The frameworks provide a compliant route to purchase, but we don't have to purchase through them. So the spend that's modelled is a potential maximum forecast based on an analysis of historical demand data overlaid with forecasts of things like inflationary increases, demand uptake and potential increased purchasing through these routes instead of a spot purchasing. The service specifications for each of these frameworks have been developed based on engagement with frontline teams or service managers to identify a baseline acceptable service level. And the report remains as it was presented at the briefing in December. And so the recommendations to you as the Executive Lead Member are for approval to spend for residential care placements made under a framework agreement up to the value of £327.6 million over an 8-year period. For approval to spend up to 10 million over a 7-year period for supported lodgings accommodation, and for approval to spend for adoption support therapies called off under an open framework agreement up to £3.6 million over a 3-year period. And all of those frameworks would be starting this year.
Thank you. I have been notified that Councillor Porter would like to speak on this item. So, Jackie, was there something you wanted to say on this? Oh, Jackie, you're on mute.
Thought I'd learnt by now, wouldn't you? There's just that I wondered why they were set at different lengths of time, and I'd hope that that's so that you're not all faced with the same tendering documents in 8 years' time. But could you tell me why they're on different lengths of time, please?
Yes, some of them aren't necessarily governed by us. So things like the residential placements framework is because we're entering into a consortium arrangement.
Oh, okay.
That framework itself has been already in existence, and so it's reprocurement, but it is led by a large group of local authorities that we want to be part of, so they're not necessarily all within our control. Supported lodgings again is one that we do run in-house, but we've found that to be an effective period, and we do have break clauses within them, so should we want to end it early, we do have the opportunity to do so. The adoption support therapies, this is the first time that we're setting this up as a framework, so a shorter period is more helpful. It's also linked to government funding for that one.
Thank you very much indeed.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, with that, I will go to the recommendations at 2, 3 and 4, and thank Claire very much for a concise synopsis of what I'm sure is an awful lot of work, and I'm happy to agree those 3 recommendations.
Councillor.
Right, that takes us on to the 24-25 revenue budget. I'm conscious that all members here will have seen the excellent presentations we had at the Select Committee. So hopefully a lot of questions have already been answered. But with that, I think, Stuart, I'm coming to you first. It says on my briefing note.
Yes, very happy just to introduce this item Councillor Heron, thank you. So this is the 24-25 budget for children's services, and it's set out as agreed through our medium-term financial strategy. As the Covering report evidences, this is in light of the corporate context around the budget setting for the county council, as well as then it brings it down to a directorate level, talks of some of the challenges and some of the pressures. And in short, there is an increase in the revenue budget to offset some of the mandatory spend that we have to make, particularly in relation to school transport and the cost of children care placements. Anne Hibbert, our Assistant Director for Corporate Finance, is here. Anne, do you want to add anything to that?
Thank you. Good afternoon. Just to confirm that the proposals, as Stuart said, are in line with the cash limit set by Cabinet in December. So it's a balanced budget in that respect, albeit it contains significant pressures and challenges, as just alluded to by Stuart. No other comments from me. Thank you.
And thank you very much. Thank you, Stuart. Councillor Porter, again, I think you've indicated you'd like to say something on this one. You're still on mute again, yeah?
Yeah, once again. I'm trying to be a good citizen here. I just think in conversations we've had about revenue, I noticed in the paper that it said that the local authority grants or the local authority funding in 2011 was considered to be about 7.4% of GDP, whereas the local authority, the value of local authority spending in 2023 is around 5% of GDP. And we discussed this morning in the Select Committee about lobbying, and I'm seeking your assurance really that you will be lobbying on this matter, and we'll be able to report back in our February Council. That would be really helpful about what the outcome of that might be.
Jackie, thank you. And I'll certainly say that I have been lobbying, and I and Cabinet colleagues continue to lobby. And as we discussed, we lobby not just for more money. We'd all like more money, but we particularly lobby around those areas where hopefully there's greater traction, which is around legislative or guidance changes, or indeed interpretation by appeals around those cost pressures. And I mean, we did a lengthy talk around at Select Committee around some of those, particularly around school transport and also around cost of placement. So I can certainly assure you that I will continue to lobby. Anyone else from members who want to comment on this one? Because I do want to just be clear here for anyone who's watching this on the webcast, that this was gone into in great detail in the Select Committee, and as councillors we've all been through this. I'm sure the opposition members have all been extensively briefed. So whilst it does appear like we've looked at it quite quickly, this is the culmination of an awful lot of work by a lot of officers and members, rather than just the amount of time we're spending on considering such an important paper.
I can agree.
Yeah. So if there's no other members who are indicating that they'd like to say anything, I will go to the recommendations at 2, 3 and 4. Just before I get that, again, I really do want to thank Stuart and all his team for the work that has gone into this, and far more importantly, the work that will go into delivering what is an exceptional service under very challenging circumstances. So with that, I will agree to recommendations. So right, that now moves me swiftly on to the Children's Services Capital Programme. Pete, I think you're going to introduce that one.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, and again, as you've spoken, we had an extensive discussion on this this morning at Select Committee. I'd like to say that this is your 3-year capital programme, takes you through to 26-27. We're presenting a balanced programme that responds to a number of the challenges that were discussed this morning, and is in actual fact a very exciting investment of some 242 million over the next 3 years. So nothing further there, Chairman, unless there's any further questions.
not from me. Again, I have to say we have, whether it's in members' briefings or whether it's through the select committee, we have considered this in great detail. And I know Councillor Forster has certainly looked in great detail on the elements around schools. Councillor Porter, again,
No, I have nothing to say on this. I think we investigated this morning. Thank you.
No. Are there any other members who would like to comment on this item? Again, I'm not seeing anybody, and again, I don't, as we said, we have been through these extensively. Pete, I'd just say thank you again to you and all your team. Again, not just for the budget, but for the delivery of these capital programmes. And so I'll go to recommendations at 2 to 11 and confirm that I approve those recommendations.
Thank you, Chairman.
That now takes us to item 4, which is the future of Ampfield Church Primary School. And just before I go to, I think it's Mark introducing this. No, is it Richard doing? Richard introducing this. Really must check the briefing notes.
No, apologies. It's a late substitution, Councillor Heron.
Yeah. The answer is before I do it, this is requesting me for approval to go for the publication of the public notices, which is the formal part of the consultation. I think this is not a decision. So, Richard,
absolutely, Councillor Heron. To be clear, the report sets out the outcomes of the initial consultation that we've held on the future of Ampfield Primary School. The recommendation seeks authority to enter a period of statutory consultation, which is now required in order to further consider the future of the school. The report's not changed since Chairman's briefing, but I'm happy to take any questions on it in particular.
I have no questions because again you did do a comprehensive briefing ahead of that informal consultation, and I think all members have done some detail on this. But Councillor Porter, again, I think you've got a comment you'd like to make on this one.
I just, I think I hadn't realised that the whole federation is not in a healthy state, really, although the school's much loved. John Keeble is also very low on numbers. And I wondered what the process is that we can support a school around there when, again, in fact, the paper describes the fact that Ampfield's got very little new building. And so, and Hursley's not dissimilar, and whether we have a longer term plan for this area or whether we just have to wait and see.
Jackie, we are working with the school and the schools in that area around their numbers and their future numbers in order to try and support them, particularly around currently some of their financial challenges. It is a period of challenge for those schools, but I think it's a storm we can collectively weather. So there's a lot of work going on through HIAS, through Education Finance Services and through personnel services to support those schools to be able to set future balanced budgets, but we are very conscious of the pressures they're under.
I'm just declaring interest. I'm a governor of a very healthily financed primary school, but I'm very conscious of the real challenge for village schools with a very small PAN. And I really feel there should be some sort of study into this work as well, if we can, over the next few. I'm sure you're already doing it, Richard.
We are, yeah.
That's good. That's encouraging. Thank you,
Jackie. Perhaps if I will say that I have in my division Hampshire's smallest school, which I will also declare the interest my daughter attends. And you know, this is a different. We saw in the sort of presentations at select committee this morning. We are seeing numbers go down into year R. We also see all sorts of issues around costs of housing in rural areas and that accessibility to families. And finally, you know, quite rightly, parent choice. I think it is a really difficult picture. And I think it is a strange thing to some people that we are providing new schools in some places and potentially having some schools struggling in others. But again, you know, with whether it's climate change, the cost of school transport, parental choice, unfortunately, you don't always have the demand for the schools where the schools are. And I do think this is a real challenge going forward. I don't know if any of the other authors want to comment on that. I know, Peter, you do an awful lot of time around teams looking at predicting what numbers we want and equally where we will want them, and they don't
But
always tie up.
I do acknowledge it's an art, not a science.
Yeah.
I think, Chairman, and the school places plan that we talked about this morning is a snapshot on how we look to manage those school places. And rest assured that we keep an eye on every school where we see a significant surplus or a significant shortfall of places. That's all something that we and the team are looking at regularly throughout the year.
Thank you. Any other members want to comment on this before I go to the recommendation? Well, no, and again, just point out that this does follow an informal consultation and is now just asking my approval for that statutory consultation. Confirm that I'm happy to agree to recommendation at number 2 on the report. Richard, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Heron.
Okay, so that now takes us to item 5, and John, I don't know if you want to do your introduction for item 5 and 6 together, so you cover the 2 papers. Obviously, then I'll go back and do them individually, but I don't know if you want to speak to them individually or together. But John, over to you.
Thank you, Councillor Heron. I'll do them together because the substance of the recommendations of the secondary report is actually very similar to 2 of the recommendations in the first. The reports both seek approval to make changes outlined to the school transport policy and to the post-16 policy. Both have been out to public consultation 30th of October to the 6th of December, and to be clear, there are no savings attached to either of these sets of policy changes. The aim of the main policy changes is largely to increase choice for parents and give other options, flexible options to discharge our duty to transport children to school. There are, in the main policy, there are 5 recommendations: to introduce a personal transport budget, to look at introduction of independent travel training, review of the allocation of passenger assistance, for the contribution for discretionary transport to be rise year on year in line with CPI, and then to update the wording for clarity and to follow the DfE guidance that was published in June of last year. The consultation itself was well responded to, so the main policy had 262 responses, post-16 78, and that was subject to lots of promotional activity, so it went out in press releases, direct emails to service users, social media, on the website, newsletters, communications to schools, and also to community and other groups that represent parents using the service. The summary of whether the respondents generally agreed or disagreed with the proposals is in paragraphs 16 to 20, and there's more detail later on, and I can go into more detail if you'd like, but sort of paragraphs 29 to 67 for the proposals, and 79 to 98 for the responses and what they said. One thing to note on the main policy, which is in paragraphs 109 to 110, is that we had one response to the feedback that felt that one of the items in recommendation 5, the update of the wording, would make a change to eligibility for school transport. We don't feel it did, but obviously our ambition with this was to make the policy clearer, and the fact that there was that misunderstanding meant that there was clearly the possibility for it to be misinterpreted. So we have altered that since the last version that you've seen to reflect exactly the wording in the DfE guidance that just says that when we're looking at whether a child would be expected to walk to school, then we will be sensitive to families of where the child is of secondary age, because children, SEN children and mainstream children might have different capabilities of being able to walk in those situations. So we've made a change to that bit. Otherwise, it is as you've seen previously.
Thank you very much. Before, what I will say is, unfortunately, I had to leave the select committee before I heard the deliberations on this item. Officers, job teacher, is there anything that was raised at select committee that you think my member of select committee that I ought to be aware of, particular to these two items?
Really, we talked about how we would review a lot of the conversations at select were about the improvement plan more than the policy. The policy itself, I think people have seen that in previous meetings. So members tended to focus on our service improvement plan.
No, thank you. Councillor Porter, you indicated you want to speak. Can I
Yes,
again
please.
ask you if you'd be happy to speak on both
Yeah,
the reports in one go?
Yes, of course. Although John says that it was a good response, actually 260 and 78, when we've got 13,500 children effectively taking the one that's represented by 260. But nevertheless, I think it perhaps shows that most parents are very content with the service they're receiving, and they wouldn't be there trying to do something different. I think the wording change is really helpful, because I think that was a definite problem before. And but I do know that obviously a lot of people will not be happy at an increase on the costs, but I think it's more of a pragmatic solution to get CPI going every year, because at least then people are not having a huge hike. But I'm still concerned that the 16 to 18-year-olds, the ones that don't take special transport, but that actually have their own transport to go to college, are still paying an awful lot of money. So people on an 8-mile journey or an 8-minute journey are sometimes paying up to £1,000. So education at post 16 is still not free. They still have to pay to get there, and that's very regrettable. But nevertheless, from the point of view of the two policies, I'm very happy to accept the two policies changes.
Okay, Porter, thank you. Are there any other members who want to talk on either or both of the policies? Not seeing anybody. Well, first of all, can I say that taking each of these, the personal transport budgets, I have heard from some parents about these, and I must say overwhelmingly that those have been positive, particularly those who are not entirely satisfied with how the county are providing, but recognise that we're doing so because it's a real struggle to get providers to meet their needs. And actually, they have a couple have commented to me that they think that actually by having these personal transport budgets, they will be able to get a better service for their children and actually help the county out in what they recognise is really difficult provision circumstances. So that I think is a positive one. I did have a couple of people who sort of asked me, well, look, is this, you know, you struggle to find it, is this the way where you're going to hand it over to us and it's going to be our problem, and you know, you're going to, and that we were very clear, and I think it is very clear in the report that this has to be something that is by agreement with the parents. If they turn around and go, no, this isn't something we want or doesn't work for us, then our statutory duty remains as is. And I think that's really important. This is another option. This is not a way of offloading the difficult cases. I just want to talk about with the independent travel training again. And Councillor Porter, I think you've raised this with me previously about what was being done in other authorities. So I mean, I really welcome this, because I think this is an important step for some people, and it's one that has to have parental support. But I think actually that this is a really positive step for those that are appropriate to be able to assist them into a more independent way of life is something I think we all strive to do where it works and appropriate. Jack, I don't know if you want to come back there. I can see you. Yeah. You're on mute.
Councillor Tustine might like to speak to this from personal experience, but I think what we're concerned about that if we don't do independent travel training, we get to a point where a young person is 18 and they don't have any experience of perhaps taking themselves somewhere. Perhaps Councillor Tustine might like to comment.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jackie. This is something that sadly going to one school was my son, as they talk personal experience, he was getting himself from a short distance, but then once he gets into the post-16 travel, I'm now transporting him. So I'm a typical parent that's doing that. So he's actually regressed as far as that goes. So I actually welcome this independent travel training. I think it'd be really good. I hope the colleges and further education places, and where appropriate in secondary, they encourage it to get youngsters doing it, because certainly if you're able, once you're post 11, you pretty much are capable of catching the bus and getting to school off your own merit without parental support. And it does discriminate, and it does make a divisive sort of environment if you don't actually have that equality. So it's about equity and equality here. So yes, I really welcome this actually, and I'm looking forward to seeing some positive progress with it.
Thank you very much for that, and it really is helpful when we have personal experience from this. And I will just perhaps come back to you to make sure how we promote awareness and encourage partners with this. I think once we've got the policy, it's really important that we encourage those to make use of it. So thank you. The other one I just want to talk about, Councillor Porter, you mentioned it, was the uprating of the contributions. Nobody welcomes that, but as we heard at the Select Committee today, it is really difficult. But equally, anywhere, you know, money that goes in one area is money that's lost from another, and it is really difficult. And I do recognise that some people are struggling, but equally, it's really important to note that certainly here, and talking about the post-16, in the post-16, the vast majority of the people for whom we want contributions are setting up. We don't take any contributions from. So it is challenging, but equally, I do take out the Porter point and agree with that. It's probably better if people know what the increases coming forward are likely to be than it is to have unfortunate jumps. Doesn't make it any more easy to afford if you're struggling. But again, I think this is really opportune to say, if people are struggling, talk to us. Please talk to us, because it may be you're entitled to some support that you weren't aware of. It really is to push out to here to people, if you are struggling, to please talk to us to see whether there is some support out there for them. So I think with that, I will go to recommendations 1 to 5, which is what recommended is actually 2 to 7 on the report proposed changes to the school transport policy, and agree those. And then on to item 6, which is the determination of post-16 transport policy 2024, and the recommendation there at number 2, and confirm that I agree with that one. So that now concludes my part of the meeting, and Councillor Forster, I will hand over to you for your items, and can you then conclude the meeting when you finish, if that's okay?
Councillor Herron, thank you very much. That was nicely covered. Welcome everyone. I'm Steve Forster, the Exec Member for Education. It's great to have you with us. And I will go straight into the meat of the 4 decisions that I have. First of all, can I just confirm there have been no deputations received, so we can skip straight over that. That's also correct. No, sorry?
That's correct. There's no deputation, sorry.
Thank you very much, Adam. There are no key decisions, so the 4 points I've got are all non-key decisions, and we'll go straight into the first of those, which is item 7 on the agenda, the Standing Advisory Council on Religious Educational Annual Report 22 to 23, SACRE. I've got this down as one that Natalie is talking on, please.
Thank you, Councillor Forster, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm presenting this on behalf of our very skilled and excellent RE lead, who can't be here today. The purpose of this report is for the Executive Member for Education to receive the Standing Advisory Council on Religious Education, that is SACRE, Annual Report 2022-23. The SACRE's role is to advise the authority on how best to improve the provision of religious education and collective worship for schools in Hampshire, as RE is not part of the national curriculum. And through SACRE, local communities and teachers have the opportunity to influence and support its provision. SACRE carries out its role by requiring the local authority to review the agreed syllabus when thought necessary, and by considering applications to modify the wholly or mainly of a broad Christian character requirement for collective worship. It has a duty to provide an annual report, which has been provided to the National Association of SACREs, the DFE, and also Ofsted, alongside yourselves. So having been agreed by SACRE in its meeting on the 7th of November, the recommendation today is that the Executive Member for Education notes the content of SACRE's annual report.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions on this? No hands raised, so on that basis, I am happy to accept the recommendation. I'd like to thank all those involved. I know many have attended the meetings where this has been scrutinised and discussed, and it was most helpful. It does help the authority as its purpose is advising the authority. So I would like to approve the recommendation that that we note the contents of the SACRE annual report 22-23. They're duly noted. Thank you. We move on to item 8 on the agenda, which is additional SEMH resource provision at Perrins School, secondary school in Alresford. I think we're keeping you busy, Natalie. I think this is one that you're talking on again.
Yes, that's correct. So yes, the purpose of the report is to seek approval to work with Perrins School on the establishment of a resourced provision. The provision will create 15 additional SEMH places, hopefully opening in September 2024. I know that you've heard a lot about SEN needs this morning, so really this is a good news story. The paper details the cost of resource provision places, specialist school satellite places, and independent non-maintained special school places, which is where children need to be allocated if we can't provide them in-house, which is what we always try and do. And by looking at those numbers, it's very clear that this provision will, as well as bringing our young people closer to where they live in order to access educational provision, it also saves the local authority a significant amount of money. Perrins has been scoped and has an available garden area where a modular building can be installed, and the access and other facilities on the site are very agreeable for this kind of provision. I don't know if anyone has any questions.
That's great. If there are no questions, I have to comment that I think it's really good that this is a win-win-win for the children, the community, and for the authority. A perfect example of where we're investing to improve things. So I am happy to approve the recommendation that there is establishment of a resource provision for those 15 additional spaces at Perrin School from September 24. I note the great time frame. It's fantastic that we're able to deliver it in that time frame. So my appreciation to the officers that were involved in the preparatory work, and also to those that are going to be getting spades in the ground. So that one is approved. We next move on to the next item, item 9, which is a similar one, SEMH resource provision, this time at Cams Hill School in Fareham. Natalie, over to you again, please.
Thank you, Councillor Forster. This indeed is another place where we have noted that we are able to provide a much needed provision in a short time scale and for a relatively small amount of money, hence pushing for it to happen as quickly as possible. There is a need in this area of Hampshire for SEMH places also, so it is a very welcome addition to our SEN resources that we hope to put this provision in place by September 2024 with the same cost returns that the Perrins provision hopes to give us. So unless anyone has any additional questions, I think this really is a very straightforward good news story, much needed, and I am again thankful to my colleagues that have helped us identify and create the papers to put to all of you to enable this to happen in a really short time frame.
Are there any questions on it? Lots of shaking heads. That's excellent. Again, I'm happy to, with the same comments, approve the recommendation for the establishment of a resource provision for Perrin School from September 2024. Thank you on that one. We now move on to the last of the decisions today, which is a very significant one. It's decision 10 relating to the Aldershot Urban Extension Second Primary School, better known as Wellesley. So I think Colin is talking us through that one.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Forster. Good afternoon, everybody. The purpose of this report is to seek and recommend spend approval for the project proposals for the proposed new Aldershot Urban Extension Second Primary School at the total cost of 12.5 million, conditional upon planning permission being secured. The new primary school is a two-form entry primary school, so it will be providing education for up to 420 pupils, together with a resource provision for 8 pupils with special educational needs. The new school is required to meet the anticipated demand for primary places arising from the remaining homes to be built on the Wellesley development as the Aldershot Urban Extension just to the north of Aldershot. This school will supplement the primary places already provided for the development from the Cambridge Primary School, also delivered by the County Council, that opened in 2018. The site for this school and the majority of its funding has been provided by developer contributions from the Wellesley developer, secured by the County Council through a Section 106 planning agreement as part of the planning approval for the development. Appendix 1 to the report shows some images and plans that sets out the proposals for the new school. The school is to be an academy run by an academy trust and is planned to open in September 2025. Most of its funding was previously approved in the capital programme a year ago, and the remaining additional 2 million was approved as part of the capital programme report just discussed this afternoon. The planning application was made in September in 23, just last year, but the decision is now anticipated in February of this year at the next regulatory committee in February. And the recommendation is therefore conditional upon planning permission being secured at that point. So the recommendation is for spend approval to 12.5 million for the project proposals, conditional upon that planning permission.
Thank you very much, Colin. That was comprehensive. Are there members any questions on this? Thank you. No questions. Lots of shaking heads. I think I got off more lightly than Councillor Heron in his section, but that's great testament to the good and comprehensive reports. So thank you, and the fact that there should be nothing contentious there. It's a real benefit to the community. I know this development at Wellesley has been coming through since 2013. As Colin said, we had the Cambridge Academy in 2018, and it's good to see it coming through on time and on schedule. Providing these facilities locally will be most welcome. On that basis, I am happy to approve the spend of £12.5 million on the project proposal for the Aldershot Urban Extension Second Primary School, obviously conditional upon planning permission being secured, and hopefully that will come through shortly and won't cause any delay to the project. I think that brings us to an end, so I'd like to thank all the officers for their excellent work. I'd like to thank all those members for the scrutiny this morning and for your continued input, and particularly those who may be watching this in Aldershot who have contacted me about the new school. I know there's a lot of interest and great desire to see it up and running. So thank you, everyone. If I can ask for the broadcast to be stopped, and then we'll close the meeting. Or close the meeting and then the broadcast stopped, I should say.
Thank you very much.
As soon as it's been